Hi, welcome to this demonstration. In this demonstration, we are going to talk about module system in TypeScript. These modules were introduced in ES6, and TypeScript is very well compatible with this particular concept. So let's define module. A module is a way to create a group of related variable, function, classes, and interface. So we can group all the related functionality in a single module. So let's say if you are working with the employee management system and you have a certain functionality that has to do with the employee details, that particular set of functionality can be grouped together in a single module. So all the function, classes, interfaces, variables, they always execute inside a local scope. They are not inside a global scope. We can say that the variable, function, classes, interface that are declared in a particular module cannot be accessed outside that module directly. In case you want to access those variable, classes, interfaces, method outside this particular module, you have to use a keyword export. So we need to export this functionality out of a certain module, and there might be some other module which might import certain functionalities that are required for the processing. So we can create one module that exports certain features and the other module can import those features in order to use them. So let's create a small function over here. This function is again a very small function that has to do with the addition of two numbers. So we'll create a function, and this function will mark this particular function name as addition. This particular function will take two parameters, first and second, and we need to add these parameters and return the value. So we'll say return first plus second. Let's typecast these parameter. We'll say this is a number. The second parameter is also a number. And then the return type of this particular function is again a number. You can use this particular function addition over here in this particular file. So we can use addition. We can pass certain parameters and we can execute this function. The value returned from this function has to be saved inside some variable. We'll just save this inside a variable return value, and we'll console log the values. We'll say console log return value. Let's run and debug this program. In the output, we can see this particular addition, which is addition of number 1 and 3. So over here, simply we created a simple function and we executed that function over here and got the result. My application can be a set of multiple functions. So apart from addition, I can have other function like multiplication, division, and so on. So I can create few more function over here. I can say multiplication, and I can create a division function. Now we have set of three functionalities available. These are set of some common functionality because we are trying to create some calculator sort of stuff. So right now all these three functionalities that we have, addition, multiplication, and division, is accessible within this particular file itself. If we try to access this particular functionality in some other file, it will probably give us some error. So let's try to do that. I'll create another file which is using functions.ts. What I'll try to do over here is I'll say addition, and I'll try to pass some values to this particular addition function. We'll take the return output. We'll say var return data equal to this addition. So now let's go and execute this function. So over here, when we are trying to call this particular function, we get some error. It says the addition is not defined. Similarly, if you try to use the function multiplication, we'll again get the same error. This particular error would say that the multiplication function is not defined. And similarly for the division. So over there in that particular file, we were defining all the functionalities that are required by a calculator. And in some other file, I want to use those functions. So next what we have to do is we have to export these functionalities out of this particular file. And the file using functions will import these functionalities. So what we'll do over here is we'll put a keyword called export. Similarly, I'll use the keyword export over here and the export function over here with the function division. If we want to use these function inside some other file, we need to import that particular function from the file working with modules. So inside using function, I need to import those functions. I'll say import. What function do I want to import? Let's say addition, and which is a file from which I want to import. The file name is working with modules. So now we'll try to use this addition function. So even if I try to execute this addition function, even if I'm trying to import this particular addition function from this particular module, it is still giving me some error. The error says that there is no default export. So this particular file working with module do not have a value which is exported by default. So what we have to do next is we need to go back to this working with modules, and one of this particular function or one of the property need to be marked as a default export. So I can say export by default. So what is the impact of putting a default keyword over here? Whenever I'm importing, let's say I'll import any random value. If you write import random from this particular module, this particular module will return us the default value, which is this particular function addition. So now if you use this random function over here, we'll say random. So we'll see that the output is the addition of two numbers 1 and 2. So let's run this. So once I have value inside this random variable, I need to console log that value. So I'll just console log return data. Let's run this program. In the output, we'll see that we'll have an addition of these two numbers. So whenever we are using an import keyword and we are putting down a property name from a particular file, that particular file will return us the default value that is exported from that particular module. So over here in this particular module, the default value that we are exporting is addition. So we'll go back and mark this particular random function as addition. So we know that the default value that was returned from that particular file was addition. So I can just say addition, and then we can use this function over here. Now the next scenario is I need to also import the function multiplication and division. So this addition function is always exported by default. Let's say if we want to import this multiplication, what we have to do next is we have to put a comma, and inside these curly brackets you have to put down the properties that you want to import. So now let's say you want to import this particular property or a function multiplication and division. So we can put this over. So in the IntelliSense also you can see that we have a division stated over here. So next what I can do is I can try using all these variables. I can say return value equal to multiplication of 1 and 2, and we can also use the division function. So here we can see all the three functions that we create in working with modules are now available to this particular file using functions. We just have to use an import keyword inside this particular file using functions. And in order to export all these functions from this particular file, we have to use the keyword export. Whenever we are trying to export data or we are trying to export variables, function or anything from a particular file, one of the values should be a default export value. Else this particular TypeScript code will give you a compile time error. So next we can see that we can even export some classes from this particular file. I can say class employee, and this particular class employee contains name, which is string, and a age, which is number. So we can put an export keyword over here. So I can say export. Once you put an export keyword, this particular class employee is available to be exported. And again, inside this particular file using function, I can write employee over here. And now we can create variable out of this particular employee. So I can say employee1 equal to new employee object. So exporting data from a particular file is not just limited to functions. It can be any variable, it can be a class, it could be some interfaces, it could be some functions, or any random value that you want to export. And similarly, you have to use these curly braces in order to import certain functionality from a particular file. So this way, using a module system, we can segregate our entire functionality into multiple logical blocks. Each logical block can be a file containing the set of related function. So in this way, our program will be more organized and workable.